Greetings as always from Costa Rica. Thank you very much for joining me for this live Costa Rica chat with Costa Rica Matt. My name is Matt Rosensteel and I'm broadcasting from Playa Junquillal here in Costa Rica, just 30 minutes south of Playa Tamarindo. Today, our subject is rental income here in Costa Rica. We get a lot of inquiries from people looking at relocation, or rather looking at bringing some money down to Costa Rica as an investment, and they want to understand what kinds of returns they can expect on an investment property here in Costa Rica. I'm excited to say that my colleague, David Carr, who is owner-broker of Coldwell Banker Jaco, is going to join us. David has been managing properties and involved in the real estate market here in Costa Rica since 2005. He currently manages a small portfolio of rental properties for some of his clients. He also has some of his own investment properties. And so David is going to share his absolutely invaluable insight with us about investment rental income here in Costa Rica. There are four things we're going to go over primarily. First and foremost, I'll talk about location and specifically how location will determine how you can generate rental income here in Costa Rica. Second of all, we're going to cover a comparison of rental properties in different areas. I subscribe to a paid service called AirDNA. AirDNA gives data on different markets and all of the Airbnb and VRBO data scraped from those different markets. And so we'll do a bit of comparing different areas of Costa Rica, specifically Playa Tamarindo and Playa Jaco. We'll also talk about how Playa Junquillal, our small, really developing community, compares in that mix. And after we've compared the areas, David and I will go over a bit of the taxes involved with rental income properties here. And finally, we'll have a discussion about maximizing your rental income from a property here in Costa Rica, some tips and just general ideas for how you can make the most money from a property here in the land of Pura Vida. Thanks very much, as always, for joining us. It's a responsible Sunday this time. I appreciate you tuning in to our episode here on rental income. Thanks, and stay tuned. Greetings from Costa Rica. My name is Matt Rosensteel, also known as Costa Rica Matt. This is my YouTube channel where I talk about everything related to moving to Costa Rica. Greetings from Costa Rica. Welcome to my new exclusive listing here in Guanacaste, Costa Rica. Here in Costa Rica, in Playa Junquillal, Playa Tamarindo, Costa Rica, real estate, a Pura Vida lifestyle. What the heck? Just kidding. So whether you're interested in buying real estate in Costa Rica or you just want to learn more about this beautiful country, do be sure to subscribe to my channel. Before I bring David Carr in, that was my new intro video. We're still working on it. But before I bring David into the mix here, I wanted to go over a quick discussion of location in Costa Rica and how it affects rental income. First, you need to understand that very few people will get online and look on the most common rental property platforms. These are Airbnb or VRBO, without having first chosen their location for where they want to visit Costa Rica, which is all to say that, yes, you could create an absolutely stunning VRBO or Airbnb rental property in the remote jungle of Costa Rica, but you're already going to have a very difficult time getting any sort of organic traffic or those organic rentals just booked because your rental is wonderful. If you are looking to invest in a property and just have people rent it for the sheer fact that it's available, you do need to focus on several key locations within Costa Rica where people most often want to visit. We've got the tourism corridor in northwestern Costa Rica, which radiates out from the Liberia International Airport. That goes from really Playas del Coco all the way down towards Junquillal, and then really there's sort of a gap until you get down to Nosara. There's also an important tourism corridor right in Jaco, where you can land at the San Jose International Airport and get out to the beach in a very short drive. But the long story short is that if you want a property to just perform by itself, you're going to have to find a great location, and you need to be looking at one of those tourism hubs. Like I said, you can generate great rental income from properties in remote locations, but you just won't have any of that organic, easy to book rentals where people are finding your property online because it's out there and on Airbnb. Within those tourism corridors, really, the closer you can get to the Pacific Ocean, the better you're going to be in terms of booking rentals, because both Airbnb and VRBO are geography based and people can clearly see where they're looking at a property. And a huge percentage of prospective renters are going to first start at the ocean and really try and find the property that's closest to the beach. So you can do yourself a favor by getting into one of those tourism hubs and get close to the beach. If you don't want to do that and you don't have the money to invest in one of those properties with a prime location, you just have to plan on some other method for finding your renters. And we'll talk more about that in maximizing your rental income later. Before we get to that, and just before I bring on David, I want to bring up some interesting data. AirDNA is a service that scrapes both Airbnb and VRBO for all of the rental properties within a certain geographic district, and then compiles that data so that you can analyze rental rates and find out where you should place yours within a market. It's an extremely useful tool to me because it gives an opportunity to see exactly what rental rates people are asking. And it also compiles some interesting occupancy data and different information that we can compare from different markets. So looking just quickly here, and I'll have to, if we're comparing three different areas of Costa Rica, Tamarindo, Jaco, and Junquillal, I quickly pulled up numbers from AirDNA. You can see that by comparison, Tamarindo and Jaco are absolutely enormous rental markets where you've got tons of people investing and where there's lots of inventory. And our cute little area of Junquillal has about 1/6 of the properties, for example, that are in Jaco, or 1/5 of those that are in Tamarindo. There we have average nightly cost numbers where you can see that Tamarindo and Jaco are a noticeable amount higher than Junquillal. If anything, I would say that Jaco is a little bit lower than Tamarindo because there's just more inventory and perhaps more options on that lower price range. You also have interesting occupancy data that came out, and David and I are going to try and piece together what's going on. But you do see a higher level in Tamarindo than both Jaco and Junquillal. My guess would be that part of this is simply that Tamarindo, especially over the last 12 months, has seen our low season really start to fill up with tourists. You've seen the high season sort of stretch out into those low season weeks. And, really, there are more people visiting this area year round, perhaps just because we've got a more completely foreigner-based tourism market, whereas Jaco is also strongly influenced by Costa Rica national tourism. But anyhow, finally, on that table, you can see which platform people put their properties on, you can see that by far in Costa Rica, Airbnb is used a heck of a lot more than VRBO. And you can also see, one of the things that might contribute to this difference in occupancy, more people have their properties on both platforms in Tamarindo than in Jaco, which might simply mean that more people are aggressively or, focused on renting their property and trying to, really focus on the rental income they can get from it. Again, that's information compiled by AirDNA. Without further ado, I want to bring in my colleague, David Carr, who is owner-broker of Coldwell Banker Jaco. David actually has experience managing properties that stretches back to 2005. Would you tell us a bit about yourself first?
Sure, yeah. So I'm originally from Washington State. I've been here since 2005, handling sales and rentals in the area, and kind of can come in handy with some experience that I have in that I personally manage a small portfolio of properties throughout the Jaco area. And then I also own investment rental properties as well, both commercial, residential, long-term, short-term. So I have a pretty good idea of what is going on, at least in the Jaco area.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and having spoke with you and the people in Tamarindo, it's not too crazily different. And I think what people might be surprised by is that, first of all, for many reasons, Costa Rica is not an absolutely ideal place for people who want to focus strictly on getting investment returns from their property. And let's talk about if you've been managing now for 17 years, et cetera, what kind of net cash return realistically, and to preface this, part of the reason I'm having David on my podcast rather than anybody else in the world is that he's also an extremely open, honest person who's focused on education for people. So anyhow, give us a quick overview of what kind of rental returns you can offer people looking to invest in Jaco right now.
Sure. So, like you, Matt, I'm very straightforward and direct with what people can expect. When I speak of rental expectations, I speak very conservatively, not the pie in the sky. If everything goes perfectly right, I'm going with the conservative expectation of what you can figure in our market. And what I always tell people, it really holds true across the board, right? Whether you're on the beach, off the beach, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, ocean view, non-ocean view. At the end of the day, right, if you have someone handling the rental for you, doing everything for you, hand the keys off, just call me for an emergency, then with their margins, with their costs and fees, and then all of your holding expenses, really the expectation is a 1 to 3% dividend play, right?
Yeah.
It's really more geared towards having a property that you can use a few weeks out of the year, and you're not writing a check for your place in Costa Rica, right? It will probably pay for a vacation for you to come down here, some spending money, that 1 to 3%. And it can do better by all means. There's people that, I own property here, I do better than that. But the people that tend to make money and get those returns are usually the people that are doing it themselves, right? That are handling everything by themselves. Usually people that are living here, people like you or I, right? That we can have a second property, we can manage it, maybe even scale it. And we don't have to have that person in the middle absorb all those fees and a lot of that margin there in the profits.
Yeah, absolutely. And, up here, the typical property management fees, we quote people that generally speaking, it's going to be a 20% commission on gross rental income with some variation on that. And then a flat monthly fee as well. That might be anywhere from $1 to $250. What sorts of property management structures would you say are most common in Jaco?
Yeah, similar in our market. I mean, for the most part, I would say they're a little bit higher. I mean, I would say everyone's 25 to 35% of the gross rental is what they're going to take right off the top. And then
Yep.
some will have a fee anywhere from $100 to $200 on top of that. Some won't have a fee. Some will have that included. And then more importantly, if you're using like a local agency or a big agency, and this is really the big kicker, because there's two tiers within that, right? There's a, hey, I'm going to use someone to rent it out and I'm going to use a big local agency. Well, then if that's the case, then they're going to do everything by the book, right? They're going to have electronic facturas, which means tax filings, which means all of that carries over to you as that owner. So that involves paying property tax or paying income taxes, filings. And what I usually tell people is once you factor that into it, it really ends up being about half out the door between management fees, your expenses, your taxes, your filings, everything off your gross income ends up being out about half out the door. Now that's still going to get you in that range, where the difference between maybe 1% to 3% of break even, right? So our people in that model, they're still not writing a check every year for their place in Costa Rica. So the good news is it is covering, and that's without someone doing any work. So it is a nice structure, a nice setup, and for the most part, people are fine with that. I talk to people and like, yeah, as long as it covers the bills, I'm happy. As long as I don't have to do anything, I'm happy. Right? It's got a place for my friends and family. I'm parking some money. I've got upside in the investment. Though that is our buyer and that is our client. Our
Correct.
client and our buyer is not the traditional real estate investor that comes from the States. Hey, I own a handful of rental properties and I do anywhere from 10 to 15% in profits on them. No. That's not a reasonable expectation in our market. At least I don't think.
Yeah. Well, and there are higher returns possible. I think you can get either an absolutely prime location. If you have the capacity to pay, for example, $350,000 for a Tamarindo downtown condo that's right across from the surf break. Right now, you can still see a little bit better results up here, where at least, property managers are quoting 4, 6, or even 7% for net return once they've, paid all expenses. But that's the absolute prime properties. A sunrise condo right in Tamarindo's, Bar district. And I think another thing that may have affected our market a lot is just, the sheer volume of relocation that we've had recently. Families moving down to, specifically this area, Northwest Guanacaste, because we've got this slew of private schools that have now sprung up. And a lot of this relocation has soaked up the inventory and
Sure.
You've seen a lot of the overall rentals that are available just disappear. Again, but that's only 4 to 6%. You're putting $350,000 into a 2-bedroom condo that has to be in an absolutely prime location. And, for a lot of people, that prime location condo isn't going to be the best. They don't actually want to stay there for 2 weeks when they come to visit Costa Rica because it's in a party community.
Well, and the thing too is, especially with where we are in the market, it all comes down to that purchase price too, right? Because there are absolutely, I mean, and look, we all know that yes, there are opportunities out there. They do come up, and there's ways to come across it, but for the most part, right, just the broad spectrum, that expectation should not be should just not be what people are figuring on, right? And I think the other part of it too, to kind of keep in mind, is that as things change now with the prices going up, it's, I think, going to be even more of a challenge to get that ROI if you're based on percentage.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to a point you made about you mentioned certain companies, and especially the big box, huge companies in any town, they're going to be playing things by the book and paying all of their taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So those taxes get pretty hefty for anybody watching. And of course, on Costa Rica, Matt, we would never encourage anyone to consider anything except playing it by the book. But obviously, there are people weighing their options out there. And so let's give them a quick rundown of what the taxes are on a rental here. Or if, yeah, I just buy a condo, what do I need to be charging clients and paying the government? What does that sort of look like?
Yeah. So, unfortunately, I think a lot of people don't understand the tax structure, and they really aren't told exactly what to expect there. So the reality is that if you're playing it by the book, you need to collect sales tax on any property you do. That's going to
Yep.
be 13%. You need to charge. Now that is a fee that goes to the user. So they're going to pay that rental. They're going to pay that 13% sales tax. It's your job to collect that. Then you're going to report that. You're gonna pay a filing here. So here in Costa Rica, it's a monthly filing. So you have to file your taxes every month, which means that you're probably going to have to pay an accountant to file that for you. So there's about $100 a month on average that you're probably going to pay for someone to do your filings. Then you're going to collect that sales tax. So you're going to charge that. And then on top of that, you're going to have income tax, which with the big agencies, right, they're doing all this on your behalf. So obviously there's tax trail. You're going to be obligated to pay that. So that is something very important to note, that if an agency is local and they're big time, then they're going to be doing it by the books, and they're going to expect you to file and pay that. So the biggest problem with Costa Rica is that when they changed this tax structure, unfortunately, they didn't think it through. Just to understand with Costa Rica is that they don't respond well to changes. And there was a lot of write-offs that people did when they did their taxes. So they just said, okay, fine, max 15% you can write off your taxes, right? And that applied also with rental income. So even though you might have $10,000 worth of expenses and you bring in $10,000 of income, most Americans are going to say, oh, I didn't make any money. I'm even, maybe even a loss, right? Costa Rica doesn't see it that way. They say, look, you made 10,000, the most you can write off is 15%. The balance, we're going to tax you on. Whether that was profit or not, they see that as profit. So that's one of the biggest challenges, and something you have to factor in, which is where what I do, I explain to people, with those taxes, with those filings, with management fees, that's how I get to about 50% of that gross is what it ends up being to the owner.
Yeah, totally. So there is that 15% tax on gross rental income that Airbnb users have to pay. It's a pretty chunk of change. And Airbnb is now coordinating with Costa Rica's national government. They have an agreement in place even to start reporting this stuff. And this is, of course, just like every government in the world is scrapped for cash. They're trying to raise as much revenue as possible. And, they passed these laws largely because they could see so little tax revenue coming out of places like Tamarindo and Jaco. They knew there were millions and millions of dollars of Airbnb money flowing through the communities. They knew that virtually no one used to pay taxes. It was all kinds of just, keep it to yourself, get the money in the US. But it's quickly changing because, the Costa Rica government needs the money. There's a big source of income there, and so they're capitalizing on it. So Airbnb users, to sum up here, they're paying, first of all, the 13% sales tax on the upfront rental cost. an Airbnb, on the back end, they have to collect and pay that to the government every month, just as any retail business does. And then on top of that, you have a 15% tax on the gross rental income, that from which, the gross, you can only deduct 15%. Now, you can deduct more expenses if you have an employee on Caja, but it's still, the definitions of deductible expenses are very limited. And you see that people really can't give themselves a write-off for everything. So it ends up, like David is saying, 50% out the door between management fees, taxes, and what else was included in the
filings, right? You're just and important to note, Matt, that just to clarify, so as of right now, as of today, so that's how the Airbnb example, right, or the VRBO example, which is big platform for most of these rentals, that's how it's supposed to be, right?
Yep.
So someone has their place in Costa Rica, they rent it on Airbnb, you should charge tax, Airbnb collects it, and everyone pays. However, most of the people on those platforms are not charging sales tax, and they're not paying that. And what they're doing is, as Americans, they're getting those funds in the US. Costa Rica knows none the better. What we've seen shift is people have gone, instead of using that agency where they're obligated to pay those taxes, they're doing it on their own and cutting out Costa Rica Hacienda, because Costa Rica just doesn't know any better. Now, if and probably it's just a matter of time, when Airbnb or any of these sites do make that agreement with Costa Rica, and Costa Rica forces Airbnb to say, hey, if you're going to rent in our country, then you need to make sure everyone here pays these taxes, and they go down that road, then it's really going to create an even playing field. And really, a lot of that's being pushed also too by hotels who feel like they're at a disadvantage because you have all these vacation rentals that users aren't paying that 13% tax, which, I mean, that's a significant savings, right? I mean, if I can go on Airbnb and save 13% on a vacation for a couple grand, yeah.
Absolutely. No, and it's a dynamic that permeates every aspect of living here. You've got contractors who, some of them are paying their full range of benefits for their employees, and others are hiring immigrants who have no benefits. There's the level playing. Yeah, exactly. Right? There's not paying their taxes either. And it's, Costa Rica being a developing country where, yes, there's less tax enforcement, and really people feel like they can stretch the rules more because there's not quite as much government capacity for oversight. I think people also need to realize that Costa Rica is willing to be on the forefront of what it is to monitor people's finances, and they will be finding ways, whether it's through an agreement with Airbnb that everybody has to charge taxes, whether it's reviewing bank records and seeing those Airbnb deposits. Costa Rica's government is, generally speaking, taking full control of its financial and tax system. And I think people would be more and more risky, or there'd be a greater risk going forward of trying to avoid these things, because they will be trying to, nail a few people and improve enforcement for sure.
Yeah, I think, with that said, I think guys like us that sell real estate for a living the right way and managing these expectations and not, putting these pie in the sky numbers, I think for our clients, we stand to be in good shape, because I think their expectation is with those numbers in place, right? Their expectations are already there. So if something changes, I don't think that they're going to be disappointed, because they're not going to get affected. And if anything, I think what you might see is those people might see a little uptick, because if tomorrow it created a level playing field, we know what would happen. We would see a lot of disgruntled owners that would get upset, and they'd start to sell, right?
Yeah.
They'd say, hey, you know what, this is ridiculous, doesn't make any sense for me, sell it, sell it, sell it. And I think you'd see some desaturation of the rental markets, which would leave the guys that have been playing at a even playing field. Well, great. Now I'm not competing with these guys that aren't paying taxes, and now all of a sudden, like I'm ahead of everyone else, or I'm up to everyone else. So I think long term, the people that have those expectations that are manageable and realistic in place, I think they're going to be in great shape. But yeah, people that have been fed some of these higher numbers, I think even if they are hitting them, I think that they might be disappointed one day when they do have to start playing on a different field.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and really that's a huge component, setting those expectations. Before I let you go, let's quickly move on to ideas for maximizing rental income here. Now, we sort of touched on the fact that if people aren't going to market the property themselves, they need to be in a prime location. We've talked, really, it sounds like the management structure itself can be one of the key ways. I see people who do end up managing their property directly, even those who don't speak Spanish.
Mhm.
Uh, and they end up just sort of working out a system where maybe they just have a cleaning lady here in Costa Rica who prepares their condo or home for a check-in. They've got a door lock with a code on it. Obviously, managing your own property can be a huge way to start boosting your returns. Do you have any other ideas for people out there as to, if they really want to try and, if as efficiently as possible, generate rental income? What tips would you give them?
Yeah, I think people need to be careful, right? I think a lot of times, especially these younger generation, I think people just assume that, "Oh, I'll throw it up on Airbnb, it's easy," right? It's getting more competitive. You do kind of need to know what you're doing. I think that, there's a reason why these agencies exist. This is what they do professionally for a living. And I think, there's two parts. I think you can use those agencies and get better returns by stimulating the rentals on your own. What I try and tell people is like, look, don't, a lot of times you can't compete with them, so you can't use the same platforms. But people that are buying these properties are from Canada, from North America. Just go with your social circle, right? Go at work or at church or in your social circle. Try and find 6 people that will rent your place in Costa Rica, and hey, oh, you got a place down there, perfect. I'd love to go down there in January. Where now all of a sudden you're booking that direct. Your property manager is not going to get a piece of that. Maybe they charge you a check-in fee. Maybe they don't charge you at all. And now all of a sudden you're getting 100% of it, or almost 100% of that, 6 weeks out of the year. That extra gross, net into your pocket could be the swing of making that extra return, right?
Yep.
So you can have your cake and eat it too. And then in that case, guess what? You still have a property manager that's doing everything. You're not
Yeah.
having to go and put on Airbnb. So that's a great option if you feel like, oh yeah, I've got some friends, enough people that I can feed it to.
Yep.
Otherwise, then yeah, I mean, if you want to maximize, it is going to be doing it on your own to whatever capacity that is. Like you said, do everything, pay a cleaning girl, pay someone for emergencies, or like I said, I wouldn't be afraid to negotiate, whether that's a property manager, an agency, Maria, whoever you have that's helping you, try and negotiate.
Yeah.
Say, hey, you charge 30%. It's a pretty good property, brings in 50,000 a year. Would you be willing to do 10%? Ask if you can on some of these properties, especially these bigger properties, they're making good money on tours.
Yeah.
Hey, would you be willing to give me a piece of the tours that you book off of this property?
Yep.
There's good money in that. So there are things you can do to maximize. It's just really comes down to how much time and energy you want to put into it. And I always tell people, look, if making that extra $5,000 a year is worth your time and energy, great.
Yep.
If spending that time and energy for what you're going to do, you can make more money in the U.S. with that time and energy, then let it go, right? Is it really worth it? So, I mean,
Yeah.
at the end here, these are not hotels. These aren't bed and breakfast. These are small condos that we're talking, 20, 30, $40,000 a year. So the swing on these numbers isn't that substantial.
No, you're absolutely right. And really, I think the key of booking a few of your own rentals can be huge. I've seen people in Junquillal down here that, they have somebody else taking care of the property, but those 6 extra rentals that they can book per year might be their entire profit. And especially because, most of these management systems will have a setup where, we're charging 30% gross, 30% commission on gross rental income if we book it. And they'll have a second tier where their commission is lower if they don't book it. And what people don't realize necessarily is that marketing a property today online, I was about to say hoy en día, isn't rocket science. You could literally, take a drone, fly it around your place, smash the clips together, go onto your own Facebook profile, add some text and stuff, and you can buy little advertisements for it. But even within your own social network, one of the most important decisions people make about buying something is who they're buying it from. And your friends may have never thought about going to Costa Rica, but as soon as you have a place there, it's very easy for people to say, yeah, wow, David's got a place down there. No problem. Like, let's book a week. I'm going to check it out. That's cool.
Exactly. Just talk it up. All you got to do is talk it up. Throw a picture of yourself when you just came back from vacation in January, when it's 3 feet of snow up in the Midwest or Northeast, wherever. And it will sell itself. And on top of it, what better experience of a renter, right? Someone that like no problem on the property. And chances are a lot of those will come back. I mean, even another part of that too is you come down during the season. A lot of these are condos, right? A complex. You stay at your property during January and February. I always tell my owners, look, you are going to meet someone at the pool that's going to say, oh, you own that? Man, I want to come back next year. Would you rent it for, 2 weeks, or could I get your phone number so I can rent your place, next year? So you're going to find those, and all you need is a few of those, and it's a night and day.
Yeah, and it's a key dynamic to think about is that a lot of these property managers have dozens of properties on their plate, and they won't specifically focus on booking. They want to help you. They can be very professional people who want your condo to start succeeding, but on a day-to-day basis, they're managing an operation that covers a huge number of properties, and they're not going. I see a lot of places that they're not going to individually market a condo through their funnels. They're just marketing themselves as a good broker of these rentals. And what you can do as an owner is get on there and say, yeah, this is Casa Seaside, and maybe it's a 1-bedroom apartment, 3 blocks from the beach.
Yep.
And you create your own branding, and you're the one that can actually push your property. And I'm going to show AirDNA here really quickly as an example. This is a really interesting function that they have, and I want to draw your attention to the left side here. In Tamarindo, the top property managers in our market, the ones that have the most listings on Airbnb and VRBO, you can see RPM over here has 66 listings. Can you imagine how day to day an RPM manager can't really book any particular rental or push any particular property? I mean, you've got Stay in Tamarindo with 52, Blue Water with 36. And so you can be well served, I think, looking at those. And here, David, we'll go down to Jaco and check it out so you can see, down there you've got Vacasa, Stay in Costa Rica, Costa Rica Dream Makers, all of them with over 60 properties. And so if a property manager is being told, I need more rentals, it's tough for them to really do that if they're managing portfolio of 6 properties. And so one of the things that I see often, some of the boutique shops that only have 6 properties or 10 properties. In Tamarindo, there's a company called Hideaway Rentals. And, they're a boutique shop that they even refuse clients frequently. They're looking to keep their portfolio small. The owner there, Andrea Ochoa, who will be on my show in 2 weeks talking about remodeling condos, she's constantly pushing for her rentals because, this breadbasket of 10 or 12 properties, maybe she has more now, but that smaller, they can definitely focus on it.
For sure. And I think a lot of that too is like, I usually make my recommendations with property management based on personality, because there's some people that want more of the corporate kind of style. There's some people that want to be able to talk to someone individually, so everyone's kind of different.
Yeah.
And just while we're on that topic too, as far as, what people can do, and I'll just kind of make this my last tip. It sounds basic, but I think people don't forget, deck out your property, right?
We mentioned
It me, especially in the Jaco area. We've got properties where they were from 2006, 2007, haven't been renovated, haven't been remodeled, haven't changed the furniture. There's people that don't change towels and sheets. And the crazy thing is that they still rent, right? So, they actually, people get reviews. I don't know how they do it, but this is a business, right? And treat it like a small business, treat it just like anything else, like invest in your property so that it's the best vacation rental it can be. And if that means renovating it, it means renovating it. If it means clean sheets, spending money on towels, whatever it is, but make it decked out. I mean, people know, right? They know what to expect. If you've got sheets that are stained, they gotta go. Yeah. Right. Don't let that. If you got a couch that's sinking and shot and rotting away, like, come on. So, and if you can go a step further and make it modern or whatever it is, or make it nice, or better yet. But I think, people don't necessarily, sometimes people want to save money and be frugal, right? Because, I just spent this money. Factor that into your costs, right? You're going to spend $300. Well, maybe you should chop $250 and figure in 15 renovations, but factor that in.
You don't want to spend every penny you have on an old dingy condo and then be stuck. And people say, well, I'll use some rental income to eventually upgrade the condo. Well, guess what? Your rental income is going to be minimal because it looks bad online. And then you're going to start getting bad reviews and ruin your entire possibility, where you want that first person who comes in to immediately file that 5-star review and to have it, you have to knock it out of the park from the beginning. And in addition to the tip of obviously upgrading and making it a nice condo, then you absolutely must take nice pictures and video of it. I get horrified seeing people refuse to spend $300 on a professional photographer when this 15 image set that is on Airbnb or VRBO is literally the only way you can compete. And so you're putting your photos into the mix and competing on this platform. Your initial $300 professional photo set will pay for itself in a month. Like no doubt about it.
You don't have a choice is the way I see it. I mean, that's something that, like, you don't have a choice to do that. You don't have a choice to have good pillows, like a good mattress. I mean, just those basic things, but it's shocking, as you know, how many people miss that. And to this day, that there's properties you go up and down where it's poor pictures and poor quality linens and fixings, so furniture. So
we did have, before I let you go, David, we had one particular question that's specifically relevant to you. Someone wanted to know if you sell real estate anywhere else besides Jaco.
Well, Jaco's my bread and butter. I mean, the Central Pacific. So Esterios to pretty much up to Tarcolis is really going to be my bread and butter. A little bit dip into the South Pacific on Antonio Dominical. But yeah, that's my bread and butter. I mean,
Okay.
obviously both of us can help with other areas, but yeah, that's my specialty.
Well, and not other countries was the question.
Oh, other countries. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, other countries. Yeah, no, I'm not getting into
Yeah, that's what I figured. But
that.
I thought maybe because someone was asking elsewhere and maybe they had seen you on some kind of, video or whatever. Someone had also asked about the Uvita Dominical area. And my, impression would be that the short answer is that since these places are further from airports, further away from those expat corridors, Uvita and Dominical aren't going to perform as well as Jaco properties, or am I
Actually, they
mistaken?
crank, Matt. They kill it.
Really?
They
Oh,
kill
yeah.
it.
And why? Is it just perfect surf down there?
So luxury home market, right? So if you look at Manuel Antonio, what's happened is that spilled over to Dominical, where people that want a luxury ocean view home, you don't have that so much in our market. And I think this is my theory. I think my theory is because for me it's a little bit remote for especially that luxury buyer, but I think that luxury buyer, that's what they're craving. They want to be away from everything, and they have the means where no problem. They can jump on a plane from San Jose and go down there. They can hire a private chef, no problem, right? But what they do want is if they are going to be up in the jungle and be in Costa Rica and the rainforest and whatnot, they want a great view and they want a high-end property. So,
Yeah.
and they're willing to pay for that. So you do have a lot of those properties, and yeah, they do very, very well over there.
Yeah, I put in, to Air DNA, the Bahia, Ballena area, and they have a similar occupancy number. It kicked out 67%, same as Tamarindo.
And big numbers. I mean, you can hit those. I mean, they have $1 million homes that are grossing 150, 200,000 a year.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your insight there. No, it sounds so whoever had asked that in the chat, that's an answer for you. I'll be answering a few more questions that we've gotten here in just a minute. I will let David go and get back to his
We're watching
Sunday.
football. Yeah, yeah.
David joined me completely out of completely out of the blue here. Really appreciate your input and insight. If you're looking in Jaco or the surrounding beaches, David is the person to whom I refer anybody that contacts me. If you want to get in touch with him, you can email David directly, and let's see if Daniel can put it up on the screen here. His address is David Carr, and I had sent it to Danielle on WhatsApp here, but his email address is davidcarrcostarica@gmail.com if you're interested in the Jaco area. Or you can just reach out to me and I'll put you directly in touch with David as soon as possible.
Perfect.
Again, really appreciate your time and
Always.
your input, David.
Always.
We'll be making a trip down to Jaco to look at real estate with David someday when we get organized and have some time. So thanks.
If I don't see you then, I'll see you in November.
Yeah,
Right
Gen 2.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
See you.
Thanks, Matt. Pleasure.
Really
Take
yeah,
care.
absolutely. So to answer a few questions that we've gotten quickly in the live stream here, somebody had asked about Reserva Conchal, or rather Conchal rental properties. Conchal is an absolutely exquisite white sand beach. It is almost entirely surrounded by Reserva Conchal, one of Guanacaste's top exclusive gated communities. Rental properties in Conchal are going to perform extremely well in terms of occupancy. You'll be able to charge very high rates. You'll see that every high season here, you will definitely have booked solid from Christmas through Easter. In those gated communities like Conchal, you can often see that the extra fees that come along with living there can eat away at those rental returns that people have. So a lot of the condo projects within Reserva Conchal, between the beach club fees, the HOA for the individual condo project, plus simply the cost of air conditioning some of them because they're bigger condos, some of them can have a base homeowners, just administrative cost of over $1,000 a month before we start talking about electric, water, property management, etc. Now, in Conchal and in those exquisite gated communities, if you built a large home, you could be charging rates that would lead to huge net income at year end. But I think for the average condo owner in some of those communities with huge numbers of condos and great amenities, the rental returns can be almost that same range that we're talking about with David, 1 to 3% if you're using a management company, maybe a bit better if you're really aggressive and managing part of the process yourself. If you have one of those exquisite homes that's just an absolute different type of property, then yes, you could be looking at higher returns on investment. We also had the ridiculous service fee they charge for people. Yeah. There had been another question. We addressed Uvita or Ohochal. Dan Donahue, yes, the absolute best place to find real estate listings will first be Coldwell Banker Pacific Realty's website, which you can find at cbpacificrealty.com. We publish listings from other brokerages. We don't have everything, but pretty much every day our office manager, Deborah, is publishing a new listing, whether it's an exclusive that we have of our office, or if it's some other office's exclusive listing as well. Really, the best way to get a full overview of the properties that interest you in any particular market is to contact a realtor, because yes, you can work with a buyer's agent here in Costa Rica, and a buyer's agent should be able to tell you the dozen websites that you should visit for any particular area to get a full overview of all of the listed properties. And that realtor will be able to tell you which sources are legitimate and which companies are just outdated or fishing for customers. In Tamarindo, for example, I usually conduct a search for people where we'll set up a Google spreadsheet. I can throw listings on there. My assistant, Danielle, will throw listings. We'll also have the client put anything on there that they find that's of interest to them. And we scour, first and foremost, the web pages done by the legitimate real estate brokerages, but we do also work looking through Point Two Homes, Realtor.com, a lot of other websites to find whatever's available in our market. Got to send a quick message that someone just dropped a beer at my door. They could tell I was broadcasting and brought me a drink. That's really nice of them. So shout out to Alberto for dropping off a delicious 16-ounce cold and crispy tall boy there. Lee had asked, so who is making sure the people, and we actually had somebody answer that. Yeah, absolutely, Lee. You can see people manage homes where you'll have the keys in a lockbox, or there are more and more electronic, remotely controlled lock systems that you can work with renters easily. My wife managed properties for a long time, ending in 2018 and 19. She had coded locks and could just text people a code, set it up on the door, and make sure that everything was running. And you see more and more people doing that here in Costa Rica. So if you want to manage a property remotely, you just need one on-the-ground contact here that is able to get your property cleaned and ready for visitors. And really, even if you don't speak Spanish, you can be texting with this person, and telling them, hey, I need to get my property ready for X date. We'll have a move-in, and then just send the code to the client, tell them that everything will be ready, and go from there. Let's go back through and review. We talked about Conchal. Thanks for joining us from Northern Ireland, Rory. You may be one of the first people to ever chat on Costa Rica, Matt, from Northern Ireland. Ray mentioned, hey, good to have you, Ray. Thanks for your comments. Rory, any cheap land for sale in the Samara area? I don't serve clients that far south. I have an amazing colleague down there who is Nick at our CB Samara office that I would be more than happy to connect you with. So be sure to send me an email and I'll just put you in touch with Nick. No problem. Finally, Eric, is there a public resource for finding rental occupancy rates in a town? There is a service that I've been referencing. You might have tuned in a little bit late to my broadcast. I've been quoting a service called AirDNA the whole time. I really recommend it for looking for information about the rental market here. On AirDNA, you can get people's occupancy rates for any particular market. That'll be based on information collected only from Airbnb and VRBO, but they do calculate, their algorithm does search databases in a way that eliminates the blocked days for a property and compiles bigger data so that you can get an idea. And we were looking earlier at occupancy rates where in a quiet area like Junquillal, AirDNA reports people have 50% occupancy annually. And in Tamarindo, which is arguably one of Costa Rica's best rental markets, the occupancy rate across all properties, even the poorly managed ones, goes up to about 70%. Again, I really appreciate everyone joining me. I've got exciting news for next week. We're going to have Glenn Stokes back on my channel. Glenn built his own container home here. He moved to Costa Rica without having ever visited the country, or rather, he purchased property in Costa Rica without having ever been here. So next week on Sunday, October 9th at 11 a.m. Costa Rica time, we'll be talking to Glenn. The following week, October 16th, as I mentioned previously, we're going to have my colleague Andrea, who does amazing remodels and gets properties ready for renting. If you haven't done so, be sure to subscribe to my channel so that you can see these live broadcasts and all of the other amazing, pertinent information that I upload to YouTube about moving to Costa Rica. Hope you have a great Sunday, folks, and see you next time.